For thousands upon thousands of years, people have looked for the correct way to live life, as well as find justification for their own choices. In ancient history, this was mostly done by identifying a god, with sets of rules for people to follow. For example, ancient Egypt used multiple gods such as Amun-Ra, the sun god, to explain why we had a sun, while the Greeks used the stars and stories to explain why things were the way they were. In modern times, we mainly use science and math to explain why things are the way they are. Globally to this day, about 70% of people still believe in some type of god. After we examine a piece of art, we will use its backstory to partly answer the question of how has religion impacted us as a whole. To try to understand religion's impact on people, I want to look at a specific piece of artwork. This is the Last Judgement, which depicts the second coming of Christ as he rains his judgment on both the living and the dead. The painting is located in the Sistine Chapel in the heart of the Vatican City. The Sistine Chapel serves as the Papal Court's intimate sanctuary, and serves as the venue for the Pope's lying in state prior to his funeral. Still to this day, it continues to be the gathering place for the College of Cardinals as they convey to elect the next Pope. The painter of this beautiful piece was done by none other than Michelangelo himself, who was a sought-after painter in the 16th century. To this day, Michelangelo is still a famed painter, with all of his works being worth a fortune. So why was Michelangelo chosen? Well, to put it frankly, no one in the 16th century was more suited for this undertaking than Michelangelo. His 1512 finishing of the chapel's ceiling had already solidified his status as the supreme master for portraying the human form. The current pope at the time, Pope Paul III, recognized this. He entrusted Michelangelo with the task of repainting the chapel's altar wall with the Last Judgement. Given its emphasis on the resurrection of the body, this subject was ideal for Michelangelo's talents. The first thing I noticed when looking at this painting is how unfairly jacked everyone is. Okay, but on a serious note, the painting contains over 300 people who all have muscular builds. Unlike all the other works in the chapel, the Last Judgement has no frame of restriction. It is boundless, and it gives a sense of endlessness. In many ways, the painting is symmetrical, but it is not mirrored. No matter where your eyes lay, each detail is different and unique. At the bottom of the painting, you can see the people who will be cast to hell as they can be seen in a fit of rage and fear as they are dragged down by demons. One man even seems to be wrapped by a snake on the bottom right corner, which has close ties to being bound to the devil himself. As your eyes move up the painting, you can see angels lifting people up into the heavens. Jesus is placed in the center of the painting, closer to the top than the bottom. What sets the Last Judgement painting apart from other paintings around its time is that it is supposed to be a depiction of the future instead of the past and present. So, what does this painting mean to the Catholic Church, or really just Christians for that matter? Luckily, the Church explains this in the Apostles' Creed. And I quote, "This is it, the moment all Christians await with both hope and dread. This is the end of time, the beginning of eternity when the mortal becomes immortal, when the elect join Christ in his heavenly kingdom and the damned are cast into the unending torments of hell." After reading this, I asked myself, why would someone both hope and dread of something? In order to understand this, I will use Fredrick Douglass's personal narrative. In the narrative of the life of Fredrick Douglass, an American slave, Douglass recounted instances where slave owners used religious justification to maintain control over their slaves, citing passages from the Bible that perpetratedly condoned slavery. He saw this manipulation of religious doctrine as a tool of oppression, designed to instill fear and obedience among the enslaved population. Douglass was an empathetic man, and he even considered the slave owners as victims to their own cruelty. What I take from Fredrick Douglass's story is the irony that religion can be weaponized into unspeakable doings of evil. To this day, we still face these sorts of problems. Just look at the Israel and Palestine conflict. Both groups have slaughtered each other non-stop for hundreds of years in the name of God. Quite frankly, it's saddening, because when I talk to people affected by it, they hold no hate for the other party and claim it's all politics. It's safe to say many wars have been started in the name of God, as a way to reach out the invisible hand of self-interest. The slave owners we discussed earlier in Douglass's narrative shows how easily people can be manipulated. And I don't just mean manipulating others, but manipulating themselves as well. By tormenting and profiting off the slave owners damned themselves into evil doings using the word of God. Maybe deep down some of the slave owners knew better, but ultimately were brainwashed by the culture they were born into and stayed in. I would go as far to say that this is why Douglass considered them victims of their own cruelty, not just in the mental tool described, but in the two pathways of afterlife that the slave owners believed in. Whether we are or are not religious, we get to spend our lives making our own choices. As we have learned, religion can be used for both good and evil. Both internal peace and torment can be found by studying and believing in it. In a twisted way, religion gives us a choice to be who we want to be in life. I believe this is why the Last Judgement is depicted as the moment all Christians await with both hope and dread. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.